episode 107 of Strange Brow Radio. I'm your host, Tobe Johnson. Thanks for tuning in. All of you at patreon.com/Strange Brow Radio. Keep the show going. Keep the pirate ship afloat. Today we have a wonderful guest I've never interviewed, and I haven't spoken to this gentleman in quite a few years. I'm talking about extended experiencer John Brown, and he's got quite a story and quite the footage. So, in a moment, my talk with John Brown. It's the weekend before Christmas. In fact, when you hear this, it'll only be a few days upon us. And that means you can go to Feral by Aaron at Etsy.com, ERYN, and get a rushed order at Feral by Aaron. Check it out, all your alchemy sound tools. All right, we'll be right back. Okay, if I'm to be truthful, I have cut this interview 5 different times now. Not this interview, but this prologue before the interview, based upon the fact that I'm having a carb overload from a pre-Christmas visit from some friends from out of town. So the first ones I was just plain out of breath, and that's not a good thing when you're trying to speak. So I think we can pull this one off. So our guest today, as I said, is John Brown, the YouTube channel Salish Sasquatch. And you're going to want to load that up here and look that up. Do 2 things at once and go to YouTube and type in Salish Sasquatch, S-A-L-I-S-H, Sasquatch. Okay, while you do that, I'm going to remind you that out of the blue, Amazon.com, which used to be only books, now has part 2 of Where the Footprints End with Timothy Renner and his co-author Joshua Cushins. And there's a chapter in there about the experiences of the Owl Moon Lab. In fact, the cover of the book is an owl and a moon and a Sasquatch and an orb. So, yeah, plenty to read and look at, and certainly a lot more in that book than just that story. So you can go check that out at Amazon. Where the Footprints End, Volume 2. What an amazing cover. And so I think our copy's in the mail. It's on its way. So thank you, Timothy Renner, for doing that, getting it out there before the holidays. So make somebody's holiday extra cool and stick a copy of Where the Footprints End right in their sock. Also, what else do I need to tell you? Oh, we have something coming up in January, maybe February, but probably January, a live event where you can actually arrive. You can go online, or you can actually come to this event. And I don't know how many people we can fit in, but it's going to be in Washington State, and it's going to be north of Seattle. And it will be a smaller venue, and it might be a 2-day event. So stay tuned on that. And people are at patreon.com/Strange Brow Radio. You will know this before anybody else. So be prepared for that. And I'll tell you more about that next week. Also, next week, Alex Whitcomb and Ashira 7 is back. We're doing a part 2 to the Hyena Man. And Alex is going to whip out his artistic skills. I don't know if he's going to do it live on video, but definitely going to take notes via Zoom and air some video of what we have with Ashira 7 in this part 2 of the Witness Sketch. And you can see our previous sketches again at strangebrowradio.com under Witness Sketches and see what people have seen close up. All right, as I said, John Brown, right there at the reservation, at the Salish Reservation, Washington State, and a long-term witness. Everybody in the tribe at the reservation has an opinion about Sasquatch, and some have incredible stories, and the Browns, well, they're one of those people. So it's good to have him back. They've been kind of quiet for the last 4 or 5 years regarding their activity, and it's good to have them back in the community talking here straight. So make sure you go to Salish Sasquatch while you listen to this interview, because we're going to be referring to some of this FLIR footage that John and I believe his brother captured. And you're going to want to follow along and take a look at that with us. All right, my interview with John. All right, on the line with me, thanks for calling in, is extended experiencer John Brown in Washington. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. All right, so nobody really knows the case of John Brown from my perspective, but I know a little bit about your story and what the audience calls you, because that's what I call you, is an extended experiencer, someone that knows about Sasquatch living on their property, all around their property. But you have the added bonus of being, and I don't think I'm sharing too much, on a reservation as a Native American. So I'm going to let you take it away, John, from wherever your starting point is with how this started. Maybe even go back to your childhood if you can, about, about maybe what you heard from other elders in the community. And then I will just sit back and take it all in.
Okay, so, growing up on a Indian reservation for the vast majority of my life, I've always heard of Bigfoot stories. I always believed them to be true because, they were coming from people that didn't have any reason to lie about it. And so it's always been something that was interesting to me. But as far as, things happening around our place, as far as, what we were aware of, it all started back in 2012 when I was going out to the car to get something in the evening. And I come outside and I smell this really strong smell. And it smelled kind of like a skunk, not quite as sharp. But shortly after that, I'm talking 30 seconds, I hear this whistle from one side of the property. And then I hear a whistle from the opposing side. And after that, I started paying attention and, coming outside and listening. And, there was a lot more that, unfolded afterwards. And we had eventually reached out to the Olympic Project after all kinds of things had happened, a daylight sighting, hearing wood knocks, whistles, rocks being banged together, really loud vocalizations. And we started after the Olympic Project had lent us some thermal equipment and audio recording. We started, documenting as much as we could. Mm-hmm. And like I had mentioned before, we had, with the thermal camera, the first one that was lent to us, it didn't have the onboard recording capabilities. And so Sarah and I were outside, and you've been to our property and you know where the gazebo is. Just a short distance away from that, probably 60 feet or so, you hear this metallic banging. And then after, we didn't know what was being banged on. We just knew that it was something banging on something metallic. And I was just like, oh shit. And Sarah and I both ran to the back porch because it was pretty startling. And we had that thermal imager that didn't have onboard recording capability. So we got that out and we were trying to figure out how to turn it on and everything like that. But then I started walking a little bit closer to where that banging was with a flashlight, and I had my pistol in hand at the time. And so I flashed my light over to where I heard the banging, and then all of a sudden I just see these bright eyes, and it was just for a fraction of a second. I can't even tell you like exactly what color they were because, this is back in 2012. My memories of things, just like anybody, kind of changes throughout time. So I couldn't accurately tell you what color the eyes were, other than that they were bright. It was reflecting off of my flashlight. I was just like, oh shit, because I was 40 feet away from it when I saw it. And so I quickly run back to the house because that was just way too close for comfort. And then Sarah's looking at the thermal imager and she sees what appears to be a Sasquatch just swaying behind this bush. And after she's watching it for a minute or so. And then finally I go, get out your cell phone and take a picture through the viewfinder. And she did. We sent that we told Derek and David about it. They came out and David did some recreation pictures. And based on the recreation pictures, it was at least 6'6" standing. And the next day we looked to see what it was banging on, and there was this old rusty pot that was in the woods. And that was the only thing metallic, and it was in the exact location that we had heard the banging. So why it was banging at us, I don't know. Maybe it was trying to signal another Bigfoot or something. I don't know. But I believe that was in September of 2013. And then shortly after that, they lent us a camera that had onboard recording capabilities. And when we first got it, it was just kind of like a toy. Like my brother Ben and I would come out here often, multiple times per week, and just, play around with the thermal camera, sit by the fire, talk about sports, things like that, until something happened. Then we'd, listen and pay attention. But it was in October of that same year, October 2013, we had heard this like capping towards a tree on one of the trees behind us. And I quickly got out the camera and I was just scanning around, and I saw this, what you could see through the viewfinder on this particular camera. Perhaps it was faulty. I don't know, but it wasn't. What you could see through the viewfinder wasn't nearly as clear as like what you can record and what you actually see on the computer once you put the SD card in. But what I was looking at was this human-shaped head, just this oval head. And at first, when I looked at it, it was on the ground, like it was laying down. And so I was trying to figure out how to get the thing to record. By the time I was looking down at the camera, trying to get it to record, it was in a different position to where it's behind this ridge line. So you're essentially looking at it from the chest up. And when I'm looking at it from the chest up, it was in a clearly different position. I'm thinking that I'm recording at this time, but I realize that I'm only taking snapshots of it, and hand the camera over to my brother Joel. And he finally, after, messing around with it, he was able to get it to record. And so it was just, pretty much staying still for 2.5 minutes. And there's no good answer that I have for this, whether it was an auto shutdown feature or something that was faulty with the camera. After 2.5 minutes, the camera stopped and we weren't able to get it going again. And, after that, Derek and David and Derek's wife, Tori, came out. We did, recreations and, lining everything up. And so we don't know how tall it was or anything, but we could clearly see that it was at least 4 feet across in the shoulders. So as far as major events that have happened, those are things that have happened.
Okay. Well, we got right to the meat of it all here, John. So we'll just we'll take it from here and just fast forward, because there's stuff that happened in between this infamous FLIR footage, which people can see if they want to at Salish Sasquatch on YouTube. And there's only a single video up right now, but it's one hell of a single video, and it's everything you just heard described. Now, my question to you is that the other thermal video or the other thermal still that I see, is that the other one that Sarah took with her phone?
Yes, if you're looking at it, if it's something that you're looking at from a completely different location.
Yeah.
And do you see like a story pole or something that is showing, that is showing something for scale?
Yeah, there's a thermal shot here of what looks like, this looks like a screenshot of a thermal image of a chest up Sasquatch.
Okay.
But I don't know if this is the same one.
Well,
regardless, the video is. Go ahead.
Okay, that still shot that Sarah took, when we had heard the banging, we actually have that. We actually have that clip on audio too. and perhaps I could get that from David Ellis
Mm-hmm.
to send to you. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking at something from the chest up, that is just, you know, an enhanced version. Maybe if it looks different than, you know, what we
Mm-hmm.
saw when Ben and I got the thermal
On the
video. But the one that Sarah took a snapshot of looked completely different.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There's a couple snapshots actually that you guys have of what looked like Sasquatch. And okay, so let's just go right to this thermal footage that you and Joel got via the Olympic Project, letting you borrow one of their FLIRs here. So you get the video camera running to the point where now you can discern that you see a conical shaped head and a 4-foot stretch of a chest cavity. But you also see in the video a cow coming by, and this is cow country. So help people understand why this isn't a cow.
Okay. I mean, for one, like when you're looking at the cow, there is a cow that walks by in the video.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that the cow's ears will also show up in thermal footage.
Mm-hmm.
And you can spend as much time as you want trying to figure out how what we're saying is a Sasquatch. Anybody could spend as much time as they want trying to show me how that's cows. You're not going to make that look like cows. And you're not looking at something off in the distance, because what would be directly off in the distance from that angle is a fenced off area where there was definitely no cattle.
Right. Yeah. I just wanted you
and
to
also,
make the point. Mm-hmm.
One other point that I wanted to make was a lot of people think that, you know, it just stays absolutely still the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're playing around with it and you're fast forwarding, you can see that there's clearly a lot of head movement that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you can see,
I mean,
it's a good enough FLIR to where you can see there's a heat signature on the orbital sockets and the brow ridge, right? I mean, you can see where there's a heat signature on the clavicles.
Right. And the thing that was, even though, you know, I mean, we were very new to the camera at that time. That was the first time that we ever even tried to press record.
Mm-hmm.
But if we had just known a little bit more about the camera, like, we would have not been as stupid. Speaking for my brother and I, like, we would have thought, maybe we should adjust this lens for clarity, because if we would have done that, you know, even at that distance, we would have been able to see what its face looked like. And so that's one of those things that, you know, looking at it in hindsight, yes, we should have did this, but we didn't. But anyhow.
Okay, so the added bonus here, of course, people that are watching this on YouTube, they're seeing the video linked to your YouTube page. And I'm also going to include the comparison shot here where David Ellis, who, you know, David is just he's always been a help for me when any sound files I've sent him. So I can imagine you probably had the same experience with him too. He's out there doing a comparison shot of himself in the same exact area to show. And Dave's not a small guy by any means. I mean, he's over 6 foot tall, I would imagine. And
I would think he's at least 6 foot. David's at least, you know, 6'2", 215 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a big guy.
Yeah. And it's substantial. I mean, it's like 2 Davids at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's substantial. And then going to, you know, just seeing the spot there in the daytime, and knowing your property, only coming there a couple times, but just, you know, knowing the story, the pot, how else would the pot, and how far away was this metal pot from where it should have been?
I mean, I think the pot was in the exact same place that it was banging on it. I mean, maybe not, but I mean, from where Sarah and I were standing, it was 40 to 50 feet away from us at the time. I mean, enough to scare the shit out of us.
Okay, my question was the pot taken? Was it your pot? Do you know where the pot came from?
Oh, it definitely wasn't one of our pots.
Okay, gotcha.
It looked like it was a pot that was in the woods for 30 years.
Gotcha. So it was a found pot. It was potty trained.
Yeah.
It found a pot.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, there's so many
And that's
things flooding back to the times when you and I hung out, and we're going to go back and forth and shift to issues. But I remember one of the things that you told me back in, it must have been 2013 time frame, when you said it moved like a crackhead. And I just thought that was such a funny way to describe this jerky, faster than fast motion that witnesses describe, not just extended experiencers, but people that, have fleeting glances describe this bizarre, fluid, jerky motion. Uh, Describe that a little bit more to people about the movement that you've witnessed from them.
so the time that I saw one in the daylight, this would have been in April of 2013, and Sarah and I were, I mean, we knew that we knew that there was some crazy stuff going on. We suspected it was Bigfoot, and we had started putting some food out. I mean, for all I know, we could have been feeding raccoons and not even feeding any Bigfoot, but whatever. We were putting some food out in the evening, and it was still daylight, and we were in one of those tree lines that you walked through, where there's a trail walking down by the creek and everything. And we hear this, we hear, banging, we hear some, really bizarre sounding chatter. And then I'm getting really frustrated and uncomfortable. I'm like, Sarah, we got to get out of here. Let's go. And she's getting frustrated with me because she can't find a place to, put the food that she was going to leave out. And then I glance over to my left, and I see hiding behind this tree, and he looked really stupid trying to hide behind the tree because he was so massive, and he was not hiding at all, but he was behind the tree. And I see a Sasquatch moving around really jerky, like head movement. And I'm saying this is daylight, but also consider that we're in the tree cover. So even though it's the sun's going down, there's enough light to where I could still see like details as far as like the color of the hair on him. I mean, it was kind of reddish brown, and I could see that the hair was clumped together like it was dirty. And I could see like how muscular his butt was, and lower legs. Like it was just, he was huge. And at 100 feet away, you can make a pretty good gauge as far as size, as far as what you're looking at. Taking into consideration he's moving around cracked out, like his real fidgety and everything, uncomfortable. But from 100 feet, you could tell if it's the size of a door frame, at least. And a door frame being 6'8", he was every bit of 6'8" crouched down. And I mean, it seemed like it was going on for a long time that I was looking at him, and I was so intimidated that I was only looking at him through the corner of my eye. I wasn't willing to square off or anything like that, even though I did have a pistol with me at the time. But I'm telling Sarah, you need to look over there. There's one right behind that tree. And she was just terrified. She did not look over at it. She was just too afraid. And it gets to the point where Sarah and I are cussing at each other because I'm like, we have to get out of here. And finally, we eventually did. But the last time that I glanced over at him, he was crouched really low to the ground, to the point where it almost looked like he was laying on the ground. But then again, I'm at the very end of it. I'm, extremely scared. I'm looking through the corner of my eye at this point, and I could just see that he was really low to the ground. I couldn't make out any more details than that. And the entire time, I wasn't even able to make out any facial features. I could see the head was it had a very pronounced cone shape to it, but other than that, as far as like facial features, I couldn't make anything like that out. I wish I could have, but I didn't.
Right. I mean, some of what you're describing almost sounds like it was nervous and caught unaware. Do you think that might be part of it?
Well, we were hearing, multiple chatter from different areas over there, and different sounds like, rocks being banged together, wood being banged on wood. So I was under the impression that there wasn't just one that was over there. So this is just complete speculation because I don't know, but I would only assume that that one was trying to divert the attention to him. And so that, maybe if there was, I don't know, possibly younger ones around or something that, we weren't really looking elsewhere. But he was very, very, very scared. Hold on one second.
You got it. We're on the line right now again with John Brown from Salish Sasquatch, and I encourage everybody to get over and subscribe, because it sounds like what is one video may blossom into more videos coming your way soon. John, is it fair to say that you've been privately collecting more information on activity at your property?
So I do have I have my friend Ray Hughes. He had lent me his thermal camera, so I do have that one here right now. But as far as audio recording goes, we haven't started doing that, but we're going to start recording audio again.
All right. Well, some of what we'll do is we're going to go into post and add some audio here. So in the future, you're going to send me a couple of these clips, and I'm going to play them now for the folks. So give us an idea of what we're talking about, the audio that you have.
As far as the clips that I plan on sending you,
right?
I mean, there's a lot of clips that we have that are these extended howls. There's we have the deep growling kind of howls. Personally, after hearing them so many times, I personally find the ones that are a little more strange interesting. Like one time I was coming outside, and this was I believe it was in 2013. I was coming outside, and it was in the fall, and it was very cold out and dark, and I heard what sounded like little girls singing over by the gazebo. And I'll definitely send you that clip, but there's no way that there was little girls singing back there. Not that it's impossible. I mean, I've said this before. If it actually was little girls singing back there, that's even more scary to me than if it was some type of a Bigfoot vocalization.
Yeah, it's way more scary. Yeah.
But that's one of my favorite audio recordings. And then there's another one that my brother Joel and I had heard live, and what it sounded like was like a deaf woman talking, and it was really loud, but it didn't sound like it was talking in English at all. Just some type of weird deaf like sounding chatter. And we have that recorded, and I'll make sure I get you that link as well. So
okay,
so as far as like
ahead.
some of my favorite audio clips goes, that would be some of my favorite ones. But we have audio from rocks being banged together, wood knocking, whistling. Pretty much, there's not very much that we don't have.
Right. When you record, John, and you're still recording, right?
We haven't been. We're going to start again.
Okay. So when you did previously, how would you go about leaving out a recorder?
Well, I didn't do any of the recording. Like every time, like that was always something that David Ellis and my wife Sarah, that was like their project. So Sarah would set out the audio recordings, or set out the audio recorders, and her and David would, he taught her how to use a like sonic visualizer, things like that, to where you're looking at the audio through a spectrograph, so you can visually see what it is that you're looking at. And he would explain what's in the range of, supposedly in the range of like human capabilities. If it's within this frequency or that, there's a good chance that it's a coyote or whatever natural animals may be around. but the audio was completely between. That was something that was completely done between Sarah and David Ellis. That, and a lot of times that they had, been recordings, I actually, witnessed firsthand what it is that was recorded, because, I was outside and heard it as well. Back then, I definitely spent a lot of time outside, and after a while, it really got exhausting.
One of the things that extended experiencers describe is kind of like a introductory process where things start off small and grow larger over time, as though things are coming closer, activities getting bigger. Was it like that at all out there? Or is it like that at all out there?
That's kind of hard to say. I don't know that I don't know that I have a clear answer for that. I can't say that. I can say, for one thing, between 2012 and 2014, there was a lot of stuff that was going on. But then again, I can't say that there's not a lot going on right now as well, because I simply don't stay out till 1 o'clock in the morning anymore. And it seems like back when there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of it happened, after midnight. It seemed like especially with like the audio, it seems like there was a hot period between midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Yeah, when you're kind of assured that the humans are in bed between those hours.
Yeah. One thing to maybe answer a little bit of your question, and I can't necessarily say that this wasn't. I can't say that this was a Sasquatch or anything like that. But a couple weeks ago, I woke up on a Saturday morning, and I had a text message from my daughter Chloe, and she asked me if I banged on her window, and the text was at 1:30 in the morning. And I asked her about it the next morning. I was like, "Why did you think that I would bang on your window at 1:30 in the morning?" She goes, "Something banged on my window." And I was scared. And after I texted you that, I went to see if it could have possibly been you, but I went and saw that you were sleeping. And so that happened. And then a couple of days later, I'm laying down in bed, and I wake up at 12:30 in the morning to a loud bang on the side of the house. And so I don't know. I can't rule out that wasn't possibly a person. The only thing about it is, if it was a person doing that, then it would be a really stupid thing to do, because doing something like that, you're pretty much asking to get shot.
Right. Yeah. And so your kids have experienced, at least on one occasion, bangs on the window. Have they experienced anything that would be remotely close to a Sasquatch? Have they had a visual? Have they had their own experiences?
They've never had any visual sightings, but there's been times that they were like vocalizing really loud, around the property. And it's for most of it, for my daughter Frankie, she's 9 years old now. She probably doesn't remember a time when Bigfoot wasn't around. It's just like she, at a young age, she's been outside and heard them before when we were out there as well. And that goes for my daughter Chloe and Sydney.
Right.
And so it's just girls. It's just something that they know is real.
All right, so they don't question it. They don't look at you guys as doing something crazy.
Oh no, definitely not.
Yeah. Okay, well, what about other people in your vicinity, your neighbors, family? Do you have to deal with ridicule factor?
So as far as neighbors go, there's this guy that lives about a quarter of a mile up the road from me. And after things were happening around our place, I had told my wife, and I'm not going to say his name specifically, But I was telling my wife that if there's anybody that knows about Bigfoot, it's this guy, because this guy's job is pretty much fishing all the time on the river. When he's not fishing, he's hunting all the time, and this is how he's been his entire life. And so I'm friends with him, and I go down by the river. I see him when I go fishing, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, so have you ever seen or heard any Sasquatches before around here?" And he didn't answer me right away. He was kind of awkward for about 30 seconds. And then he said, "Yeah." And I go, "How many times have you seen them?" And he was like, probably about 15 times. And I go, "Well, when was the last time?" And he goes, "The last time was about 5 years ago." And he even told me that he saw a pregnant one before. But what I found compelling about that is, of course, somebody that's spending so much more time outside, out in the wilderness than I am, of course, they're going to see them a lot more than I do, especially since we're in pretty close to the exact same area. And he's just out there hunting and fishing that much more than I am. And so
right.
He's got some pretty interesting stories himself.
I know it wasn't more than 5 years ago when I was near your neck of the woods, and I stopped in a convenience store off the interstate and talked to, um, a tribal member, probably 45, 50-year-old dude, and asked him about Bigfoot. And he went on to talk about how his grandmother on the reservation would trade salmon. Have you heard stories about that?
There's a lot of stories that are, kind of similar to that. But I remember who you're talking about, because you told me who he was after you were at that store.
Okay.
And the guy that I was just telling you about, that lives a quarter mile up the road from me.
Right.
The guy that works at the store, he lives exactly across the street from the other guy.
Okay, so there's some credibility behind his claim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both of those guys live just a quarter mile away from me.
I mean, dude, here's the deal, is that you're on reservation land, and I think there's something to this. I mean, I think that my gut tells me they're more comfortable on reservation land and kind of relax the protocol. Is that a crazy theory?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a crazy theory at all. You've been on the reservation. I mean, there's a lot of aspects to where, how lenient some things are. It kind of seems like you're in a different country, and under some circumstances, like it's not uncommon to see, somebody driving down the road in a quad,
Right. Yeah. Well, the fact also is that what other animal do we talk like this about? Relaxing the protocol isn't something you say about, a bear, or, I mean, maybe you have trained animals to get used to humans and parks and things of that nature, but then we have all these other bizarre aspects that seem to be dancing around Bigfoot areas. And you've probably heard stories about this too. I mean, it's a frustrating issue for some people. I imagine it's kind of frustrating for you at times.
Mm-hmm. As far as what specifically?
Well, first of all, I remember coming on your property and seeing the cow patties flipped over with sticks in them. And that seemed like, you know, primate behavior. You kind of remind me of sticking the stick inside of a termite hill to that degree. But you said, here's where you'll find it. And you walk down towards this barn. And this is my segue to talk about the barn story here, because some of these issues are frustrating. And I know that there was a frustrating issue while you guys were squatching one evening near this barn. So I'll let you tell this story.
Oh, okay. The story I just told you before we started recording. So
right, you refresh my memory, right?
Okay. So this must have been in 2014. Probably, I would say it was close to around the same time that you were last here. And at the time, Wes Germer and his girlfriend was here, as well as Kirk Brandenburg and Shannon LeGros. They were all over here for the night, and we were going to go to this abandoned barn that's always been kind of, we've always thought it was kind of a strange area, and thought, with Sasquatches being around and this abandoned barn, why would they not check it out from time to time? So one evening we went over there, and we probably went over there like 11 or 12 o'clock. And when we got there, it was raining pretty hard at first. And so we were just, sitting in the barn, just walking around, talking, waiting for the rain to pass. And then Kirk sees this light that is coming towards us. And it was just this white light. And he goes, "Hey, look at that light." And we're all looking at it. And then Kirk's talking about it. He's like, "The only thing is I can't see it on thermal." And so that was something that was really strange to us. And immediately, Kurt, there's this open face to the barn with some barbed wire. Kurt goes through the barbed wire because he's trying to get a better angle at what it is that this light was that was coming towards us. And the last we saw of it, it was coming towards us, and it just kind of dived down towards the ground. But the thing about it is it wasn't an area that there was heavy brush cover or anything like that. So one would think it would be detectable through thermal. I'm not ruling out there being a person that was, walking towards us with a white headlamp. I'm not saying that that's not impossible. It's very possible. What's weird about it is, being able to evade thermal detection. I'm not saying that there's not a perfect explanation for that either, but it didn't show up on the thermal camera. But
Well, what would the explanation be? Did you ever get any kind of data coming back from Fleer or Brandenburg about how that would happen?
Well, I mean, it wasn't anything we had to ask Fleer about. I mean, you've looked through a thermal camera before. You know that, if there's something warm that's coming towards you and it's not obstructed by any brush, it's going to show up on thermal as long as it's close enough. And
right, and this isn't a lower grade thermal, I would imagine. This is probably a better thermal than your average cheapest one that you can get.
Yeah, I don't know exactly which model it is that Kirk has, but it's definitely at the time he got it, it was probably a $10,000 camera. But he's looking through there. He goes to the fence, and then we're going out the other way. And then there's this, next to the barn, there's this other metal building. And then all of a sudden something bangs on that really loud. And it definitely got our attention. But the question is, what was it that we were looking at? Was it a person with a headlamp on?
Well, are there any native stories about these lights in general? Had you heard about lights in proximity to the reservation?
I haven't, as far as old Indian stories, I can't think of any. I'm not saying that they don't exist. There probably is some out there, but I'm just personally not aware of any.
Right. And was that the first time that you saw any kind of weird light on or near your property? Well,
I mean, there's been I remember one time specifically seeing a red light going through the woods, and it wasn't that it was like so high or anything like that it couldn't be explained as a red headlamp on a person. I mean, it was within that range, but I saw a red light go through the woods one time, and it's possible that it was somebody with a red headlamp on. I just don't have
right. Yeah.
I just don't know anything other than that.
No, I mean, the reason I ask you about it, John, is because I know that soon after Wes and Shannon had their sighting at your place, Wes had a sighting with his brother and started to ask about lights in proximity to Sasquatch areas. And so, I've watched just the slow ebb and tide, people trying to wrap their mind around the fact that lights have anything to do with Sasquatch activity. Do you think it has anything to do with it?
That's one of those questions that is really difficult to answer, because personally I've been to the point where I thought that I've probably questioned whether or not Bigfoot would. I haven't possibly been to this point. I've definitely been to the point where I've questioned, like, man, I don't even know if this is something that is flesh and blood, just for brief periods of time. But I I tend to believe that it is a flesh and blood animal. I think there's a little too much evidence that does exist that suggests it's something natural. But as far as like strange things that happen, I mean, maybe there's other strange things that happen in the woods. I'm saying maybe that we're just we're just not aware of.
Right, right. So that back and forth between family members again, is there anybody that has a different opinion than you about what this is? I mean, that can be difficult sometime to have a difference of opinion on the phenomena. I know I've had to deal with it, but is everybody kind of on board that this is just a giant relic hominid?
So as far as I would say most Indians go, I
Uh-huh.
would say that it's safe to say that most Indians have on the reservation believe that Bigfoot is real. I would say that it's probably about a 50% divide that think that it's something that's a natural animal versus it's something that is I don't know, a stick Indian, or something from the spiritual
Hmm.
realm. I mean, a lot of them that I've talked to about Bigfoot, it's something that they want to change the subject because they just kind of think it's bad vibes. Like you don't want to be inviting something like that.
Right. You said stick Indian. Remind people what that is.
I mean, there's different interpretations of what a stick Indian is. Like some Indians from different tribes, all depending on where you're from, they'll say that a stick Indian is a Sasquatch. Some people will say that a stick Indian is some type of like a spirit that is actually like a really old Indian, from the 1800s or so, and dresses like them, that walks around the woods. Some people, another thing that a lot of Indian tribes talk about is little people, and it's kind of a mixed bag as far as what a little person is. From the stories that I've heard, like I'm not even saying I have no claims of anything regarding little people. I'm only saying what I've heard as far as like the stories that have been passed around is that I've heard of little people being like little people, but they're white, and they're just wild people that live in the woods.
Do you mean like Caucasian white or like white white?
Like Caucasian white.
Okay, gotcha. All right. I didn't know if you mean like fluorescent white or something like that, but okay. So
Yeah,
they're little white
I mean
people running around.
that's
Gotcha.
that's just that's just that's just the stories that I've heard. So I was tying little people into like stick
Yeah.
Indians. I mean,
Uh-huh.
there may be other
Yeah.
stories
Yeah.
that little people are actually stick Indians and they're actually
Hmm.
not white. I don't know. That's not my
Right.
thing.
Have you ever found, well, this is off subject here, but since we're talking about it, have you ever found little tiny footprints on your property that look like a child's shoe?
That look like a child's shoe.
Well, you described
Uh,
hearing kids over by the gazebo. I don't know. Have you ever found impressions of what look like children nearby?
one time there's this apple tree down below in the field below our property, and one time there's this, because the cows tread there so much, it's not so much, at the time that I was there, it wasn't so much leaf littered, but it was actually kind of there was just a lot of visible dirt. And one time I looked down, and there was like I would say 6-inch impression that I saw that looked like a child's foot. But I can't. I mean, that's it. I can't say that it wasn't a human child's foot. The only thing that I know is it wasn't one of my children's feet, because my children would never go down in that area barefoot.
Right.
But it is something that I saw.
Was it a barefoot, or was there tread, or do you know?
No, it was too thin to be a. I mean, you know what a barefoot looks like. You know, especially when they double step, it can look kind of wide.
No, I mean like a naked human footprint, like a bare foot. Like
oh
a
yeah.
bare
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I gotcha. So yeah, it would have been like it looked like a child's footprint, not a child's footprint with a shoe on.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that wouldn't make a lot of sense for that area for your kids. Would there be other kids down there from the reservation?
I mean, there's people that pass through the field that, you know, go fishing and things like that. But I don't know. It's I don't walk around back there and see little kids,
right,
you know, playing around in the field. It's not impossible that, you know, somebody was picking some apples and one of the kids
to
got
give
out
people
and they were barefoot. Oh, I was just saying it's not impossible that, you know, somebody was picking apples and they had a kid in their truck and the kid wanted to get out and, you know, pick some and they happened to be barefoot. That's a possibility.
Right.
But based on where this apple tree was, it was an odd thing to see.
To give a picture of what we're talking about, just to, you know, so people understand the area, it's a large expanse. There's grazing area for cattle, and there's oak trees everywhere. A lot of oak trees, right?
Yes, and a lot of alder trees.
Yeah. And so it's very open, and then it gets suddenly pretty thick with tall alders and oaks everywhere. And there's cattle trails or mule trails or game trails. Is that mostly how you get to and fro, is following those game trails?
For the most part, I mean, you know, it's kind of a mix of, you know, where areas that, you know, we walk often along with, you know, our normal paths, as well as what I would assume, you know, the rest of the game, deer, elk, whatever's passing through.
Mm-hmm. What now?
I mean, you've been down those trails before. They're kind of primitive. They're not well taken care of or anything like that.
Yeah, but they're not brushy either, right? I mean, it's open to walk through.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I just reminded of too was this moment where Shannon snapped a photograph, or Sarah did, and there was something conical shaped in the brush. You know, I just saw the photograph come up after 5 or 6 years of seeing it. What do you know about that photo?
So I remember her and Shannon, they were you know, scanning around the evening before, and they saw something. I think there was on the corner of the property. They saw something, and they weren't able to make out what it was. And so the next day, they were taking a bunch of pictures, trying to do like recreations, trying to figure out, you know, as far as, you know, what the height was of whatever it was that they were looking at, because they had the thermal picture, and they were just trying to make out what it was that they saw. And after they were, you know, going back and forth, standing on a chair, because there's this really high blackberry brush in that corner of the property, that they had to stand on a chair to, you know, have their hand, you know, being held out at some point, because it was that high off the ground. Anyhow, Sarah was looking through the pictures when she was trying to do some type of recreation on it, and then that head that you're referring to showed up. And when I was looking at it, I mean, I was trying to wrap my head around, like, man, what is it? Could this be something, you know, close could this be, something, what other kind of animal could this be? There's not a whole lot of things that make sense to me, because it's clearly not something close, because what it is isn't something close, because there's leaves that are around it. And that, when I look at it, that's, I've seen a Sasquatch in the daylight. Can't make, like I said, I've never seen their, face or anything like that. I wasn't able to make that kind of detail because it was shaded enough. But that's pretty much what I would expect a Sasquatch to look like based on, what I've seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an extreme conical shaped noggin poking up out of the brush, and somebody was standing pretty close to where this was taken, right? I mean, it's not more than how many feet away did they estimate it was from where someone was standing?
During that time that somebody was standing over there, we're talking 20 feet, 25, 30 feet.
Right, with arms
reach. But they were talking about, at the time they didn't have any idea that there was anything around. They didn't smell anything. They didn't hear anything. There was no kind of weird vibes or anything like that they had. But for whatever reason, that was in the pictures. And if somebody could disprove that was something else, by all means, tell me what that was, and clearly tell it to me.
Right.
I'm definitely open to it. But
go ahead.
I think it looks pretty compelling, though.
It is compelling, and maybe I can find that one and post this up here too. What about people getting in touch with you after you guys took off? Because you did, and I've taken off once or twice myself from the phenomena. The Browns were just kind of off the radar with this all. It was kind of heating up, got overwhelming to a degree, I imagine. And did people reach out to you to get your story, or what happened?
I mean, when you're talking, and when there's people like in Bigfoot Facebook groups and things like that are trying to discredit, any of your claims or anything like that can get really frustrating, especially when it's going on for, a couple of years. And, in my adult life, I've never had anybody question my integrity. So for something like that to happen, where it's not only am I sharing, things that have happened and things that, I believe are Sasquatch, it just became, really exhausting. And so I just basically, took a few years off of Bigfooting altogether for a while, just because I had enough of it.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about how this gets people to kind of turn weird around you. It's unlike anything I really ever had before in my personal life. What do you think that's about?
That's one of those things I don't really have an answer for. I mean, there's all kinds of people that are bird watchers. I don't know if any of the like bird watching Facebook groups, I don't know, maybe they get in arguments about stuff too, but I wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
At least not to the degree of, the people that are balls deep into Bigfoot.
Would you ever say that at one time you were balls deep, John?
I would definitely say that, because I mean, when something like that happens, and then it's like, man, there's fucking monsters that are around us right now. That's pretty bizarre. And it was, when it all happened, it was like extremely fascinating to me.
Is it still happening? I mean, I know that you're not out to the wee hour of the mornings with a flare crawling around in a ghillie suit, but they have a way of letting you know that they're still around. Is that still happening?
Well, I was telling you about like the most recent things that had happened, as far as like the banging on the window a couple weeks ago, and then the bang on the side of the house that I had heard. I mean, there may be some other things that have happened. I can't really think of them off the top of my head, But when I was that one neighbor that I told you about that had said that he had seen them 15 times or whatever, I asked him when I was just going down to the river to see what the river level was at this time, if it was going to be good for fishing or not. I saw him and I asked him, I go, so have you heard the Sasquatches recently? And he goes, oh yeah, especially now. And he goes, it's that time of year.
Yeah. Do you think there's a time of year for it?
Between 2012 and 2014, 15, I would have said that it was between late September and late January would have been like when things seem to be the most active as far as frequently hearing things. Mm-hmm. But then again, my daylight sighting that I saw in 2013 was in April. So, mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, animals act different at different times of the year. I mean, just think about how stupid bucks act, during the rut,
Right. How comfortable do you feel saying animal attached to Bigfoot? Do you feel like that's what we're talking about?
I don't know. I mean, you got to think about being able to hide from people so well. It almost seems like they're like, not that I know anything about Bigfoot. I don't, but it almost seems like it almost seems like their intelligence level is a little too high just to be an animal, and they have some form of communication, as it seems, like through chatter, through banging rocks together, banging on wood, things like that. I don't know. What is your thought?
Well, I mean, I've already spilled the beans on this show here, but yeah, something other than just an animal, something else, something much bizarre than just a clever monkey.
Mm-hmm.
But that just, that took me living on a property full time to get there. I mean, it didn't happen overnight. I had to really sink my teeth into it and find a property that would let me make up my own mind about it. But yeah, there's some strangeness attached to it all. And I haven't seen what you've seen, but if I had seen what you've seen, especially with the moment where you were, watching it do this crackhead motion around the tree, that just is a really bizarre, scary image to me because of the jerky quality. You're not quite, it's shifty, it's just like, well, what's going to happen next? And that kind of shifty quality is just very unique and interesting for just an animal.
That was the biggest thing that scared me was, how fidgety he was. Like, he's kind of in a fight or flight, moment at that time. Only speculating, but it just kind of seemed like, if he's that scared, what is he willing to do?
Right. Well, yeah, and you had a good explanation of maybe why that was happening. What about things moved around the property? Have you ever noticed that there's been things suddenly moved or missing or appearing?
I mean, that's kind of hard to say. I mean, like, I can't really say that so much, other than I do have this crate that had a bunch of. Are you familiar with like construction components and things like that?
Mm-hmm. Somewhat.
Okay. Do you know what a J-bolt is for a foundation?
I'll look it up on Google.
Okay.
Tell us what it is.
It's something that sticks up from the concrete that attaches your sill to.
Okay.
And I have a crate of J-bolts next to our woodshed. And one time I was taking a walk. I was taking a walk along the road to the river, and right by the road, I saw a J bolt, and I was thinking, man, that looks exactly like one of my J bolts. And one time I had heard we had some people over at our house. I don't remember exactly who it was, but we were outside by the fire, trying to listen to Bigfoot and things like that. And one time on the road, we heard this something banging directly on the pavement with metal. And I can't say that it was that J bolt, but when I saw that J bolt by the road, it sounded, if you bang that J bolt on the road, that's exactly what it sounded like that we heard. And so as far as things, missing and, going somewhere, that's a possibility.
Right. I remember there was a moment where I think a lawn chair got flung or thrown. I remember seeing a photograph of a lawn chair that was way out of place for just a windstorm or something like that. Is that something that regularly happens, or was that just, you remember that story?
Yeah, I remember. I mean, there was just a period, like, we were just kind of documenting anything that was out of place. And as far as that goes, I'm not saying that there wasn't a possibility that, something came in and, threw that lawn chair, across the way. But I mean, it could have been wind. You never know.
What
Like,
about property damage, like unexplained property damage, anything like that?
No, not that I can think of.
Mm-hmm. And any batteries ever been drained at all on the property or on camera equipment that seemed, I mean, you mentioned the camera suddenly went dead, but was there anything else as far as electronics that didn't seem to work or function properly, or batteries?
No, I mean, I've woken up to a dead battery just like anybody else has. But but as far as like bad timing for electronics to go bad was, when we were getting when we were recording, through the thermal camera, and it, unexpectedly shut off at 2.5 minutes or so.
Right. And are there places on the reservation that people don't go because it's known as their area? I mean, is it that open to where it's just like, oh, we don't go there, that's theirs?
I don't know if I would go as far as to saying anything like that. Like, there's certain areas on the reservation that a lot of people have, reported, having sightings and things like that. I wouldn't say a lot of different areas on the reservation, but a couple specific, like, on our end of the reservation as well as the other end of the reservation, it seems like a lot of the sightings are kind of concentrated in certain areas.
Right. Yeah. Well, what do you think's going on as far as like your ability to tolerate this? Are you happy that they're around? Or is this something that you want to continue to approach?
I mean, the only reason that I really stopped doing it in the first place was I'm just sick of other people. And at that time specifically, I was actually questioning whether or not these things were even flesh and blood. I don't believe that I don't personally believe that they're anything other than flesh and blood now. But at the time I stopped doing it, I was thinking, like, that was something that was going through my head. But as far as now goes, I think most likely there's something that's natural. I'm not saying that I know everything. I'm not saying that they could be something else, like from the spiritual realm. I'm not saying that that's not a possibility. I'm just saying that I don't tend to lean that way.
Right. Yeah. Well, they haven't given you a whole lot to work off of either, saying that would be, one of the links. But go ahead.
And if that was something where, like, felt that they were definitively something from the spiritual realm. It's not something that I would want to, look into, investigate, try to record, or anything like that.
Okay, so let me make sure I got that straight. So if you felt as though this was of a supernatural nature totally, you would just back out altogether 100%?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm not like a spirit or a ghost chaser or anything like that.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, because it kind of sounds like that is the link between them, because of all these other connective tissue issues with it, it is kind of like chasing after a ghost if you're looking into something totally supernatural.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, if it was supernatural, I mean, there's people talk about a lot of supernatural things happening, and I'm not like willing to have a seance just so I could have a Bigfoot, sighting or anything like that.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Well, I haven't heard of that one, but I'm sure that people have tried. I mean, they've tried all sorts of stuff to have a sighting. What about, do you still associate with the OP, the Olympic Project? Are they still an active part of helping you guys out?
I mean, they got they got a lot of their own things going on, especially with those nests that they have found. I mean, I still talk with, Derek from time to time, talk to David from time to time. I went camping with Shane back in, I think it was towards the end of August. And yeah, I still keep in touch with them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But they've got hot spots that they're working in, and you don't have any team members out there looking for Bigfoot with you. It's just kind of you and your family doing your thing.
Yeah, and I've talked with David Ellis. I told him, if we do start recording again, I definitely want your opinion on, anything that is, questionable that comes up on audio. And he's nothing but supportive as far as that goes.
And it's a good time to plug David, because I've mentioned him helping me out before, and now you've heard it from John. So anybody that is an earshot, reach out to David Ellis through the Olympic Project. He has an email where you can send sounds directly to him and have him take a look at him, and then he will kind of train you up on Sonic Visualizer Audacity so you can do this at home yourself, because it gets oddly addictive to listen to the hours between midnight and 3 and 4 in the morning, and stuff happens.
Yeah, and there's, as far as I mean, a lot of people forget like how crazy an owl can sound at night, and as far as it's pretty amazing what the things that David could just see visually, when he's looking at the recordings. He can tell what they sound like just by looking at it, and then sure enough, like, he knows what animal is making most of the sounds that he's looking at.
Yeah.
And
he's totally approachable. It's not somebody who's going to speak over you and speak down to you that you don't know what he knows. It's not like that at all. He's like a human being, and he will treat you like a human being.
Yeah, he's extremely humble, no ego, just a great guy altogether.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a rare thing maybe in this community. Once people think that they've got a handle on it, and he doesn't pretend to have all the answers. I mean, we sent him some really strange stuff, and he was willing to listen to all of the strangeness and say, yeah, maybe this, probably that, certainly this. And I learned a lot. And so I would have known that without you guys. The other thing I wouldn't have known without you and Sarah is when me and Jude were out at your property, she said, oh, the dogs are starting up. That's always a good sign. And let me tell you what, when the dogs start up, that's definitely a good sign, because they know a lot more than we do. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say like when Kirk used to come down here a lot when things were really active. Whenever the dogs would really start barking. Oftentimes that followed with what we thought was Bigfoot activity happening, and not just the dogs, but the coyotes as well. Like often when they would start sounding off,
Mm-hmm.
we would hear shortly after that what sounded like Bigfoot vocalizations.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Well, the YouTube page is up and running. Salish Sasquatch. There's not a website, is there? Is there a Salish Sasquatch website?
No.
Okay. Will there be?
Possibly. It's just not something that I've gotten to yet. But I'm definitely going, as far as my YouTube page goes, I'm definitely going to be putting a bunch of audio on there that we didn't have before on our previous channel.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, when I get time, I'm gonna definitely upload some of the better audio that we have.
Okay, and then we'll just stay tuned for the rest of what you have coming, and if you want to come back and promote what you have coming in 2021, if we all don't get sealed away and locked down.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Do some cool shit.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Well, great. I appreciate you, John, huddling up underneath the gazebo there, and hope something cool happens tonight for you. And thanks again for talking, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was good talking with you and catching up, Toby.
Yeah. All right. Have a good evening. Talk to you later. All right, my interview with John Brown. Check him out again. Follow along for the thermal footage of what can only be a Sasquatch as far as I can tell, unless you got a better idea. That's at Salish Sasquatch, Salish Sasquatch. There you will find him. And maybe, like I said, maybe this will be one of several interviews with him. I hope so. Also, check out next week, part 2 of The Hyena Man with Alex Whitcomb. Look forward to putting a face with a name as far as what the Hyena Man may look like. So Alex and I and Ashira 7 coming up soon. Also, thank you again to the sponsors. It's that time before the holidays. I don't know if it's possible or not, but you can go to Feral by Aaron, ERYN, check out Alchemy Sound Tools, or go check out Alex's work at driftedcreations.com. Hey, and a special plug to the Ghost Owl Brewing Company again. The distillery company out of Portland, Oregon, Ghost Owl Brewery. It will make a drinker out of you. If that's what you need in your life. We all might after this year. Okay, you be good, you be naughty, you be nice, you be you. And I will see you in the trees.